We've already had comments. This was a couple weeks ago. It was actually right before the midterms, why we didn't have a chance to cover it. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, let's put this up on the screen. He says Congress needs to block rail strikes if there are not new deals. So as I was just saying, because labor rail relations are covered by a separate legal framework, the next step that could happen if workers and the rail bosses are not able to come to a deal is Congress could cram down a deal themselves. Now, this came close to happening before the midterm elections. You had all the Republicans ready to force on the workers the really terrible deal that came from Biden's presidential board, from their recommendations that basically completely sided with the rail bosses. Republicans still stand ready to vote for that bad deal for workers. Marty Walsh now in this statement says that without a deal, he expects Congress will step in and impose contracts on the unhappy rank and file union members. So he is basically saying, listen, y'all need to come to a deal or else Congress is going to force you into a deal, effectively siding with the Republicans and what their posture was before the midterm elections. But even beyond that, it really takes away the workers' leverage. So if the rail bosses know that they're likely to get their way through Congress anyway, then they're not going to respond to, a threat or a potential strike. Instead, they're just going to wait it out because they feel that Congress and the Biden administration is likely to side with them and force a deal that, on rank and file workers that they have rejected. So very, very likely that is where we're headed since, the Biden administration is going to look. They're going to say it's Christmas time, shopping season, all that stuff. We can't have this disruption to the railways. And so we're going to side with the business interests over the workers because that sort of like efficiency and smooth operation in everything is more important to us than the lives of these workers.
I think that makes it effectively confirmed because we're already in the lame duck. You would have the administration that would back it. For them, it would be a catastrophe to have any sort of disruption over the holidays. Now, they could pressure the rail companies to actually give what these guys what they want.
How about that?
That's one option, but they're not going to go with that option, it seems, as of yet. And the companies, as you said, they have major Republican allies. The Chamber of Commerce and others are lobbying very hard right here in Washington. For all of the noise, like this is the top of what I would imagine that lobbyists on K Street are working towards. And it seems like they have all their ducks in a row. Throw the next one up there on the screen, please, the Politico tear sheet. This basically lays it all out and quoting many of the top Republicans on the committees and laying out the path through which effectively forcing the strike to end if it was triggered in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. So, that's very likely where we're ultimately headed, which is sad that the Biden administration has already signaled they're likely to just give the rail bosses their way so that, we can make sure that the Christmas holiday season is not disrupted, which, listen, I understand nobody wants these sorts of economy-wide shutdowns. That is a disaster for farmers. It's a disaster for consumers. It's a disaster for the country. But as you said very well, Saagar, there is another option here, which is just to, pressure the companies to give these workers a few days off. It really shouldn't be that much of an ask. And I do want to underscore the fact that it has gotten to this point, I think really shows you how unhappy and how burdensome these workers really find this new system. And, we have had a lot of talk about the supply chain, how important it is, how when it goes the rails, not to use a bad pun, how much everybody suffers, how it impacts prices, how all of this is incredibly critical, how it's been taken for granted. And yet here we have one of the most critical pieces of our infrastructure and our supply chain basically being held hostage by a few rail bosses who want to be able to, do their stock buybacks and reap as much of a profit as they possibly could. It is a very poor way to run a country. It's a very poor way to run an economy. It creates all kinds of risks, not just for these workers, but for people around the nation.
Yeah, I think that's said, and that's why I thought it was important. That's why we decided to lead this show with this, especially going into the holiday season. Especially, when we consider there are thousands of people, so-called temporary workers who are being staffed up in factories and elsewhere to get stuff that we order on Amazon and to fulfill the holiday crush. And this is a little bit of, the cost of what that all takes. And these people are really invisibilized. Nobody's even thought about rail workers in this country for what, like 100 years. This might be literally, I think the last major rail strike was 1946. That's what kind of spawned the laws around Congress and its ability to crush the unions. And anyway, it's an interesting part of American history that we used to have like real titanic struggles over, and now they're basically invisibilized.
Yeah,
no,
that's sad. Right. I mean, there was a monumental rail strike that led to burning of all kinds of buildings. Yeah. I mean, Militant had to call in the National Guard, that kind of stuff in our past. The other thing that I think it's worth saying is, this is part of, during the pandemic, these workers became a lot less invisible. Mm-hmm. And that's why we've seen reverberating effects, not just with rail workers, but, service workers, delivery workers, warehouse workers, where, they were sort of intentionally put in the background of American society pre-pandemic. And then when everything shuts down, you come to realize if these people don't keep working, we're really hosed. And so that, I think really elevated them in the public's eyes, and why so much of the public really has been siding with them in these fights, which was not something that you could take for granted before this period. And then the other thing that I have to say is that, I think the media has done obviously a very poor job of covering this whole situation. Case in point, as you were pointing out, a lot of the coverage has been very slanted towards the portrait that the rail bosses want to paint, and didn't even accurately describe the fact that they basically had a lockout, that they were the ones that were risking the economy. You'd have whole articles that went through without mentioning any of the quality of life, really legitimate concerns of the workers. And then, when this tentative deal was struck, there was very little educating of the public of what it actually meant, and that this was not like, okay, we're done, great job, Biden administration, way to go, you've averted a catastrophe. That this was just the first step, and that the rank and file workers were going to get to have a say as well. So anyway, that's where we are. Very likely what's going to happen is Congress is going to intervene. Labor Secretary Marty Walsh has already stripped these workers basically of any leverage. So that's likely where we're heading.
That's right.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.